Hey, I'm SKYLAR GREY, and I'm here to talk about my new album, Wasted Potential.
At the top of the Ferris wheel, plastic water bottles of vodka and some mystery pills. Flirting with the car, need to get a free ride, hoping I wouldn't get killed. Yellow jackets on my Mountain Dew that he made me spill, copping up feel. At the top of the Ferris wheel.
As you may know, I have had a lot of collaborations with a lot of different artists. I think the first big one that kind of like broke me as SKYLAR GREY was working with Eminem. And that came after I had already had a record deal and then lost it and went completely broke and moved to a cabin in the woods, disappeared from LA. And then I fell back in love with music because I had been in a deep writer's block, being broke and losing my management, my lawyer, everything. And so I had to go to the woods to find myself again. And then I wrote a little song called Love the Way You Lie. And then it blew up and it threw me back into the music industry like I had never been before. And it put a lot of pressure on me. And I was scared. And I got invited to do a lot of writing sessions. But I was so used to writing alone by myself in a room that being in the room with a bunch of other writers, I was too nervous to really deliver. And, like for me, a lot of my songwriting, I'm just alone and I'm throwing out lines that are terrible and throwing out melodies that are terrible until I find the good one. But to do that in front of other people was really hard for me. So I would walk out of all these writing sessions crying and feeling like a total failure. And then, tying back to this album title, Wasted Potential, a lot of the other failures that I've experienced that were also my fault were because I tasted a little success and then I got scared of it. I got scared of what comes with success, like negative comments and having to travel so much and be away from home. And I'm a homebody. I love being at home with my dogs and my animals. I live on a farm now. And so it's really hard for me to leave all the time. And so I got to this point in my life, I just turned 40, and I was looking back at my life and thinking like, I really didn't make it as far as I wanted to as an artist. But the reason is because I think I was just so scared of some of the things that came with success that I subconsciously, pushed things away. And also, I thought a lot about how life is so short and my time on earth is so short. And I was like, do I really want to spend most of my life just grinding and not actually being happy? So I wrote a song called Motivation that kind of explains all of that. And there's a lyric that goes, it takes too much effort to be influential. R.I.P. to my wasted potential. And that's where the album title came from.
The sun cuts like a razor through the blinds. Wish you could return your skin, cause it doesn't fit right. The air feels like water, you can't catch your breath. You just wanna listen to songs about death and have TV for dinner. Don't wanna go out, your heart is too heavy to get off the couch. You dream about spiders, your thoughts are impure. You're sick in the head, baby, I got the cure. I got a handle of...
I think having all those realizations about, my failures being my fault and also feeling like I didn't reach the point I wanted to in my career at this point, it's given me a new passion for being an artist again and doing it without fear, because I have a lot of goals and I do want to accomplish them before I die. And so I am at a point where I'm willing to make those sacrifices and face my fears. I mean, I think I pretty much answer the question of like, where did SKYLAR go with this album, because I'm explaining it in that song, for example. And then I'm just taking the reins and and coming out with a new album. And I was so scared also. This is another failure that was my fault. I was such a perfectionist with my music that it would take me like 5 years to write an album. And so in 5 years, people can forget about you. And so if I'm only dropping an album every 5 years, it's really hard because it's like starting over every time. And so moving forward, I plan on releasing an album a year, about as many as I can, and starting with this one.
I'm covered in bruises, been beating myself up. If you could see the marks that I leave on my own heart.
The album started with a song called Bruises, and that's probably the saddest song I've ever written. It was the darkest I've ever felt about myself and about my career. I'm expressing the feeling of never feeling good enough. And the lyric is, I'm covered in bruises, been beating myself up. That's how the song opens. And when I wrote that song, I felt this huge weight lift off of me. It was like, every time I write a song, it's therapeutic. But this was like deeply therapeutic. And after that, I had no desire to write any more sad songs. I didn't even want to listen to sad songs, which is weird because historically, I only listen to sad songs. But because I got it out of my system, I felt so light. And, being in this place in my life, I was reflecting a lot on my childhood and my life and just where did all the time go? And I started thinking about how my childhood was so beautiful and I didn't appreciate it enough at the time. And so I was inspired to start writing songs that I could live vicariously through and relive my childhood and appreciate it more now than I did then. And so that, Bruises was the beginning. And then I started spilling out all these almost like diary entries from my childhood. And it takes the arc of the album. It starts with a song called Nirvana, which is just looking back at my life in Wisconsin, where I grew up, my childhood in a small rural community. And then by the end, it gets to this resolve. So I guess I got to jump into the middle, though. So it starts with the song Looking Back. And then I go into these like diary entry type songs where I'm expressing, my coming of age story and how I was discovering my sexuality and how I was drawn to chaos. And then by the end of the album, it's more reflective of where I'm at now mentally, where I just want to leave the chaos behind me and I want to find my peace and happiness. And so I live on a ranch with the man I love, and it's really chill. It's not chaotic. I'm just, it's the calm after the storm. So I'm telling my whole coming of age story with this album from beginning to end. And my hope is that people will understand me more after listening to it and where I come from spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and learn about like the things that happened in my childhood that made me who I am today. I think most people know my story that happened after I left Wisconsin. So after I dropped out of high school, moved to LA, got a record deal, started working with Eminem. But not a lot of people know what happened before that. And I think it's because I didn't think my story was worth telling. I thought it was boring. I lived in a, very middle class, mediocre kind of, it was just like a basic childhood. There was no crazy traumas that happened to me. So I just thought my childhood was boring. But now looking back, I see so much beauty in it. And so I felt like it was time to tell my story. And I do think a lot of people will relate to it.
Where did you come from? And where we going tonight? I'm just playing it cool. to the side.
There are some parts of the story that aren't being told on this album yet. I might drop a deluxe and add some additional songs, but I think it was important for me as a person to get all of this music out of my system because I was really struggling with the idea of turning 40, and I feel like it's important for me to relive my childhood through these songs before I can accept the age that I actually am and like move into the next chapter of my life. And so I think my music after this album and after I do potentially a deluxe, it'll definitely evolve and change. But I think it's very important for me to do this right now so that I can move on and evolve to the next chapter. For me, there's no rules with songwriting, so sometimes it starts with a piano progression, sometimes it starts with a beat, sometimes it's a lyric idea. But it's interesting because when I was a kid listening to music, as a fan of music, I didn't really care about lyrics. They were like the last thing that I cared about in a song. What really got me was the melody and the chord changes and the harmonies. And as I got older and I started, getting deeper into writing, I started appreciating lyrics differently. So when I look back at some of my earlier stuff, it's funny because I'm like, I clearly wasn't that lyrically focused at that time. And now I feel like the lyrics are just as important as all the other elements in the song. And even when I listen to songs that I'm a fan of, sometimes I'll hear something that I listened to in my childhood and be like, wow, that's what that song's about? Like, I didn't even know that that's what that song was about. But I'm like paying attention to lyrics a lot more now. And the lyrics are actually, I think, what make me stay a fan of that song for life. The melody, the chords, they draw me in the first place. And then the lyric is what keeps me there. I've always been really hard on myself, and if you looked in my Dropbox folder, you would see thousands of songs that have been unreleased, just sitting there. And then also, people probably think I write all the time, but I don't. I barely ever write songs. I wait for them to come to me. I wait till I'm inspired. Definitely not writing a song a day. And I go through waves where I'm like writing a lot, and then I'll, shut it down and take like months off. And that's because when I'm writing something, if it isn't hitting me like this is great, I just don't even finish it. I don't spend the time. I'm like, no, this isn't feeling right.
Kiss me up and down my spine, tell me that I'm fine. In the blood moonlight, the shadows falling just right. Kiss me in the dead of night, put your lips on mine, and tell me what it feels like. I knew you in a past life. Tell me you love me.
Yeah, being in those writer rooms was really hard for me, not only because I'm a pretty shy person, so I felt afraid to throw out any ideas, but also because I just put so much pressure on myself. After having hits like Love the Way You Lie, Coming Home, I Need a Doctor, Glorious, people were wanting hits like that for themselves. And so they had high expectations of me. I had high expectations of myself. But then to be thrown into a room where I wasn't comfortable and feel like I had to deliver something like that, it was just really hard on me. I mean, I'm always open to collaborations and things, and I'm not proud of my older work. I think if somebody were to find my Dropbox folder and want to use some of that material, I would be stoked about that, I would be happy to know that it didn't go to waste, No, that's not it. Hi, my name is SKYLAR Grey, and you've just been buzzed.